Welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. My name is Michael LeBlanc, and I am your host. This podcast is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Meet Alison Hartnoll, Vice President, Unified Commerce and Marketing, Mastermind Toys, as she takes us inside this Canadian specialty retailer's e-commerce and retail story and gives us a preview of her panel, A Marketer's Guide to Seamless Customer Retail Journeys, at the upcoming RCC Retail Marketing Conference in September. Let's listen in now. Alison, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, Michael. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to meet you.
Well, thanks so much for joining me. Special bonus episode, which is highlighting the fantastic agenda coming up at Retail Council of Canada's Retail Marketing Conference, which, let's get this out of the way, it's September 19th. So if you're listening, run, don't walk to the link I'll put in the show notes so you can register. And we're going to do a bit of chitting and chatting about what you're there, what you're talking about, and all that great stuff. But let's start with a couple of other things. Let's talk about you. So first of all, where am I finding you this morning?
I am coming to you from Toronto, Ontario. So really in a neighborhood called Scarborough, where I am at the Play HQ for Mastermind Toys, a very beloved brand in the retail space for specialty toy in Canada.
Let's talk about your background. Off mic, we were talking about a grocery conference in Vegas, and you said you had some background in the grocery sector. So tell listeners a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you do for a living.
From a professional perspective, I grew up in grocery for the most part. So I did spend 17 years with Smucker Foods of Canada and going across marketing roles to sales, calling on Loblaws, and then did a stint in figuring out this little thing they call eCommerce, which really at the time was kind of a decision where they tapped me on the shoulder and said, do you think you could figure this out for us? And so, at the time it was sort of grocery e-com was new. Sure. This was well before COVID, of course, when everything came to be, but got us into some good shape before COVID hit. Sure. And then everyone really did need to start shopping online.
What's your experience, working in a brand like that in grocery? I mean, there's, Smucker's Foods. I don't know the full line, but, basically it's relatively small units, which means it's kind of expensive, or going direct to consumer is a more complicated thing. Or were you focused on kind of how do we help the major groceries, you mentioned Loblaws, get our product in e-commerce and then to the floor? What was the philosophy? What was the guide?
That's exactly it. It's the latter. So while in the US, there's enough critical mass to be able to go direct to consumer for grocery, in Canada, it's really going through our partners and not wanting to compete with the partners, but rather enabling all of our grocery retailers to be able to service the customers in the best way possible. And as you mentioned, I mean, it depends on which business you're talking about, but sure. We had Smucker's Jam, Jif Peanut Butter, also a Robin Hood family of brands. So Robin Hood, Carnation, Eagle, Crisco, all of these things are heavy. And then as we got into the pet side of the business, we had Milkbone, Meow Mix. We had a new brand called Nature's Recipe. And then, of course, the easiest e-commable was Folgers Coffee. And that's really where the reason why I could say it's the easiest is simply because it's a bit lighter. And a bit more predictable in terms of, how much you're going to use over time and when you know that you're going to have refills. But it was all about enabling our customer partners and making sure that their strategies could come to fruition. And as much as we can say, the old days was about putting cases of jam on the back of a truck, really, when you talk e-commerce, it's all about the data.
That's right.
So if you don't have the data all ship shape, then you really don't have a product to sell. So it's a lot of checks and balances behind the scenes, making sure that everything's correct. So it's displaying correctly for the customers so they know exactly what they're getting. And it's all about appropriate display and then fulfillment.
Yeah, and the retailers really rely heavily, and they kind of really appreciate the work that the vendors do to get that stuff right for their sites, right? I mean, they're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of SKUs, so it can go awry pretty quickly. So I'm sure they Really
and you know what? As I jumped the fence to come over to the retail side, and now working at Mastermind Toys, you realize the value of that vendor relationship. And we have at Mastermind fabulous relationships with our vendors. They're just so special. But whether they're, giant like the Mattels and Legos and Hasbros of the world, or they're a little more specialty like Ravensburger, or they're tiny and it might just be, one or two products that we're bringing into our stores and testing. It doesn't matter. We want to make sure that we have all of the data and the ability to showcase all of those products in the best way possible. Toys is a different one as well, because there's a lot of research in toys. There's a lot of development opportunity, and parents really want to know what they're putting in front of their kids, whether it's the material or the learning opportunity, the skills and development. So e-com is really quite important in their path to purchase, which is why, as we roll over and start talking about the panel, when we participate in the conversations about the customer, it's all about that experience and how we can make it consistent no matter where they're engaging with us. And that's really what matters at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, it's a great way to kind of begin the conversation. Now, what's your role there? Talk about the structure a little bit, and then we're going to talk about Mastermind itself, because I'm sure anyone who's got young kids in Canada would know them, but I've got an international audience as well. But first of all, tell me more about your role at Mastermind.
Sure. So I joined Mastermind last February as the head of e-commerce. And this was sort of, a month in, we did our back to the office moves. So it really was coming off of the COVID lockdowns and coming back into how are customers shopping differently now. And a lot of the conversation from an e-commerce perspective was about whether it would be sticky or not. But coming in, it was now taking what had been built up as the e-commerce business and managing it as a business unit. And so it wasn't necessarily a capability anymore. Now it's a business unit, and identifying how do we sell things effectively? How do we make sure that we use this channel as a path to purchase for each of our customers? And so that's the role that I came in to take care of. And it was anything from onboarding the items and all of the data associated with it, straight through to home delivery and onboarding same day and next day delivery, making sure that we were fulfilling our promises for our customers, whether they were Canadians shopping in Canada, maybe they're located near our stores, or whether they were international shoppers buying in Canada for delivery to one of their friends and family in our country.
Love that gifting idea. Yeah, I love that gifting idea.
Exactly. It really is all about the gifting. So I came in that scope. And then this past February, I was promoted to the role of VP of Unified Commerce and Marketing.
What a title. So, that's a great title.
I know. We sort of punted around the title and said, what is it? What is this term?
What is it?
But really, when we thought it was soup to nuts on e-commerce, then if you take some other verticals and say, what happens with the promotions? What happens with our systems and processes, and how do we service our customers in the best way possible? So my team is responsible for making sure everywhere an item is priced, it's consistent, where it's promoted, it's consistent, and how you get there. So if there is a representation of the product or some help needed to work through the processes that one of our play experts might need to go through to make sure that a customer's journey is successful, that's my team taking care of that. So platform services is one of my teams, and they are the people on the other end of the phone when one of our play experts call in front of a customer and says there's something wrong with the system. And so we really are the phone a friend. And we resolve the problems right in front of them. Right. It's not, like an issue of, thank you, I'll take that and fix it next week. This is, I'm going to fix it right in front of you and make sure that customer leaves happy.
So tell us about Mastermind. So as I said, I know it well, and anyone who's got small children or grown children now would know it well. How many stores, scope and scale? I think you only do business within the four walls of Canada, so to speak.
We do.
You take
Yes.
orders from international. But tell us, just give us a couple of minutes on the 411 on Mastermind.
Sure. So Mastermind Toys, we've termed it to be the Canada's authority on play. And what that means is, we sort of earned the right as originating 40 years ago as the educational toy store for Canadians. So it was a couple of brothers in Scarborough who started the business and grew to, about 10 locations. And then only in the last 15, 20 years did they burst out and grow to more locations. So we now have 66 four-wall locations is what we call them, across the country. And then we have our e-commerce business.
Right.
So you are able to buy in any of our stores consistently, along with our web store, which delivers across the country. And what we want to do really as Mastermind Toys objective is to inspire generations of lifelong learners through the power of play. So what that really means is we know that there's a power behind play. We know that there is a skill and development that's being learned by children and adults alike. There's all different things that you can learn through play. And some of those you might forget about. You might think you're just letting the children outside and letting them kick around a soccer ball. But in that activity, there are so many social and emotional learnings that you want to make sure that you're hitting on so that your children grow up to be wonderful human beings in our world. And so it really is all about making sure that we have that magic of the toy store. There's nothing like walking into a toy store at the holiday season. It is just unbelievable. Or seeing everything through the eyes of a child as they're buying a gift for a friend and going to a birthday party and getting it wrapped up with our signature gift wrap. It really is an amazing experience coming into one of our stores.
Your panel at the upcoming retail marketing conference is A Marketer's Guide to Seamless Customer Retail Journeys. Now, talk about a little bit about Mastermind. You've already spoken about kind of your current state, and your title of course, tells us a lot about the philosophy behind the business. Now, that was kind of a hurry up offense pre-COVID. I mean, COVID threw everybody for a big whammy, including Mastermind. And I know you joined kind of, it sounded like halfway through that, but the finish line is the important part. So, what's a couple of minutes on the journey that Mastermind went through from being an organization that had stores and a website to where you are today?
Sure. In early 2020 was when, of course, COVID hit, and was when it became a necessity. So it was less of an add-on to the business or a bonus to the business to have e-commerce, to all of a sudden go into an opportunity to have an excellent experience so that customers don't miss out. And being a specialty retailer, especially when we're focusing on gifting and birthdays and special holidays and occasions where you want to celebrate, there was the opportunity for us to launch our e-com site that offered a best-in-class curbside pickup experience. And that's really what it was about, was our play experts were still there at the end of the phone or on the chat in our e-com to make sure that you could still pull up beside one of our stores and have the same experience, and it could still be gift wrapped for you, and you could have that magic touch to that experience. So when all of that came to fruition, it really was, as you say, a hurry up and do it kind of a moment. Now, as we look at what the power of e-com has brought us, is everything for Mastermind Toys starts digitally. We ask ourselves first, how is this going to show up? Can we make sure that we have a consistent experience, particularly when it comes to promotions, to make sure that you don't walk in the store and get a different experience than you did online? We want to make sure that that's consistent, and we're managing customers' expectations. We're identifying where there's inventory available as much as possible. And we're recommending things in the same way. So when you're on at the other end of the chat, our customer service team are literally play experts. So they're the ones also recommending what toys you might have. So, the first question that we might ask you is, who are you shopping for today? Right. And you want to make sure that no matter where you are, we're able to help you address the needs. From a marketing perspective, it really does start with the team that I work with at the media stage, and understanding that we want to make sure we are the answer to our customers' questions when they're looking for a toy. They might not know what they want, but it might be, I have a 3-year-old who really likes reading, but I want them to be able to play games. What can I do? And so you're giving us like an age. You're giving us
here's a big knot. Untie this knot for
me. Exactly. But there's all of these clues, and it's almost like a choose your own adventure, right? Like it's like those books where you're like, go to page 17, go back to page 3.
That's hilarious. Well,
and that's the magic of it.
It's well delivered, well architected. So you're going to be on the panel with a bunch of other folks talking about basically, and they represent different organizations. So you're going to be talking about this on the panel. Let's wrap up with, because it's very exciting. I want people are. I'm sure people are going to be very excited to hear your contribution because it's so well thought out, so interesting in a great category. Now, last question: advice for fellow retailers who are listening, 2 starts and 1 stop. 2 things they should start doing right now, and 1 thing that they should stop. Maybe it doesn't work anymore, your experience, you've tried it, or it's something that you see, fellow retailers doing, and you're saying, or even brands, and saying, you know what, it's probably not going to work for you. What's your advice?
Definitely from a start perspective, if you're not already, focus on that data. Data. So that goes back to my comment where we're not selling things off the back of a truck anymore. It really is all about the representation for the customer. The other is to really understand the use case of your customers coming in. In what state of mind are they coming in? What are they looking for? Because you might be specialty, or you might be mass. You might have 1 product, or you might have 10,000. But it's really about meeting the needs of that customer and what they're looking for in that moment. So in that, one of the things that we talk about doing every day is talking to ourselves at Play HQ. Is sitting here and thinking like, are we talking to ourselves? Is this just a group of, the executive professionals sitting in a boardroom and talking about what it's all about? Or can we walk in the store and really run this through the eyes of our customer and really understand, what does it mean to them? What are the important things for them? So I think none of those things are new. None of those are different than you're going to hear from anyone else. But we really focus on getting back to the fundamentals and making sure that we're doing those things right as much as possible. And it's always a journey. You're never done. So really, one of the things that I'm quite fond of saying is that progress is success. It's not, you're not always going to get to an end. Yeah. It's always about progress.
That's great. Now, if folks want to get in touch with you, are you a LinkedIn person, or learn more about you, or get in touch? What do you? I
am. Yep, definitely available on LinkedIn, and available through Mastermind Toys. You can always call anyone here through our service lines and get in touch. But definitely happy to speak with anyone about our experiences. It's a really fun and exciting industry to be in, and lots of things changing and moving.
Well, Alison, thanks so much for joining me on the Voice of Retail podcast. Really looking forward to, I'm sure the audience is really looking forward to seeing and hearing you and meeting you perhaps September 19th at the RCC Retail Marketing Conference. So thanks so much for joining me on the mic. And listen, it sounds like you're doing wonderful work. Every day is a gifting occasion, and every day is a journey by the sounds of it. So it sounds like you're having fun. So thanks. I wish you continued success, and have a great rest of your day.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, be sure and follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure to check out my other retail industry media properties, Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis, and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. Last but not least, if you're into barbecue, check out my YouTube barbecue show, Last Request Barbecue, with new episodes each and every week. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, consumer growth consultant, president of M.E. LeBlanc Company Inc., Maven Media, and keynote speaker. If you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at meleblanc.co. Safe travels, everyone.